Hello fiber friends, and welcome to another Jill and Eve channel video. I'm Evie and I make yarn, and I'm glad you're with me because today we are going to make a really pretty yarn. This is a very cool textured technique that we are going to do. I am going to show you how I'm making this yarn with just a classic Lendrum double treadle spinning wheel. The fiber that we have for this yarn was chosen when we spun our Wheel of Mystery. The fiber that we will be spinning up today is rose fiber, recycled sari silk, some green dyed wool that I had in my stash, and it looks like there are some locks, and then finally some thread. So we will be thread plying this, but first we have to spin our single. So I will show you how I'm spinning this single to get this very cool effect in the final plied yarn. I also want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Lori M. She is the patron who has sponsored this video. Thank you, Lori M. The way I have everything set up here is that the drive band is on the smallest whirl. This yarn does take a lot of twist. What I'm doing is spinning one of the fibers and then joining a different fiber. So this was the silk in here, and now I'm adding the rose fiber to it. And look, I have this all crinkled up right here. That just means I need to increase my tension a little bit. So that's probably slightly too much twist. We don't need to have it curling up before it even gets to the bobbin, but having a good amount of energy in this is what's gonna make this yarn work. Our white is attached and good, and now it's time for our next section. We are going to add some of this electric green, and you can use any kind of fiber for this. Just make sure it has a high contrast. We want these bright pops of color. To get it going, I'm going to treat it as if it's a core spin. So I'm going to hold it next to this strand, this portion that already has some twist in it, and I'm going to pinch and draft this out at a 90-degree angle. And as it does that, I can help it along a little bit. There we go. See how it just starts to wrap up on here so nicely? And that means we have a good join. Now that it's going, I want to keep these locks with some of their character, so I'm not really going to draft them out a lot. I'm just sort of stretching them out to cover a little distance here, but I'm not trying to make them be, well, this is a little messy, but we're right in that spot. All right, I'm not trying to make them be particularly even or anything like that. See how these little curls are hanging out? That's perfect. So then I get to the end of these locks. Woo! Don't drop your yarn. It flies away. Okay, and then I'm going to do the exact same kind of method where I start to let it sort of core spin on and then I switch. It gives it a good solid join. All right, so I'll keep going a little ways with some more of this rose fiber. If your twist builds up too much and you need to let a little of it out in the section of working yarn that you're on, just do a really quick draft back, even stop treadling and draft back, and it lets that twist sort of travel along so that it doesn't build up too much in one spot. You can spread it out and do a little adjustment that way. All right, so we've done another section with this white fiber, and now reaching into my basket over here, and I'm gonna pull out some of this lovely recycled sari silk, piece about this long, just like how I had those green locks. I'll do the same thing to get the join going. I don't need to worry about this being completely consistent. If it has some thick and thin spots with the silk, that is fine. whatever that base neutral color is, that's the one that you kind of want to be a little more consistent. But for this highly textured yarn, even if that's a little bit more thick and thin, that's fine as well. What is happening? No! High twist yarns are unruly like teenagers. Now I'm ready to add some more of the white. This is the silk that I had before. And another way that you could join these, if you have enough room to, is to just kind of smoosh them together and then continue drafting out. Just make sure, if you do it that way, make sure there's enough fluff on both ends that it can grab onto each other. Okay friends, this spin is well on its way, and you can get the general idea of what you need for your single. You need a neutral color, you need a bright pop of color, and you need a bright pop of color. If you want to add some extra texture for those pops of color, use some locks or some silk or anything else that has some interesting texture that is fun for you. I'm gonna finish spinning up this single before we ply it up. Then it won't be a single. It'll be one of the plies. We're back with this spun bobbin of, oh my goodness, these colors are crazy and I love it. I am going to be plying with this embroidery thread. You can use any kind of thread, embroidery thread. You could use a lace weight yarn. You could use a mohair that gives a cool, you know, kind of textured halo effect to the plied thread piece of this yarn. You can go nuts and find something that makes a really cool creative yarn that you want. Have fun. So I will be using this because this is what we spun on the Wheel of Mystery. I don't know Kate. I don't know why she's lazy. I don't know her. So it'll be just kind of set up like that, and that'll keep everything separated and out of the way while I'm plying. Now to ply, I am switching the drive band onto the whirl with the largest diameter because that means that it's going to have less twist for each time that I treadle, and that's what I want when I ply this yarn. I initially spun this yarn with a Z twist, which means that I was spinning clockwise. So now to ply, I'm going to spin it with an S twist, which means I will be spinning it counterclockwise. I put the end of the string and the end of my yarn that I am plying through the loop of the leader together, and I pull it through just a little bit and then fold it over, and that's all I really need to get this started. While I spin this style of yarn, I'm going to keep the thread straight, and I'm going to let my single wind on to the thread at almost a 90-degree angle. It might slide around a little bit on the thread. That's okay. Just as I come to the point where the single that I created is changing color, I am going to switch my hands. I've been holding the thread straight out from the orifice and bringing this yarn on at a 90-degree angle, and now I'm going to switch just for a second, because as I let the thread wrap around the other yarn, it's going to lock it in place. So this section will not be twisting around. I don't want to hold it here too long though, because remember, I'm going the other direction, and without the ply to secure this portion, if this twist comes up in here, my single might actually kind of fall apart a little bit. All right, so that has switched and gone around, and now I'm switching back, but instead of continuing in a thread ply way, I am going to drag my colorful fiber back and forth over this little section, and just go back and forth, and kind of work my way along, but just keep going up and down along this. And that gives me this really cool kind of portion of very textured, almost like you're scribbling on the on the core of this, the thread of this. All right, so now I'm gonna switch it back again, just like I did. So now my thread is at the 90-degree angle wrapping onto my single. It doesn't take much for it to secure, and then I'm back to my regular plying. Now I have come to a part right here where this is a little bit stuck. That's okay. If I give it just a little help, it'll make it through the orifice. Stop for a second, work its way on there, help it out, and we are ready to continue. So now I'm going to keep my thread straight out from the orifice and bring the single that I've created sort of at a 90-degree, and it's creating this squiggle as I go. And I can let this go fairly quickly. I'm just feeding it on just like that until I get to my next colorful section. This plying does go fairly fast. Okay, here we are at the green section. So now I've been plying the white with the thread straight out from the orifice, and now I'm going to switch so that my thread is coming at 90 degrees, and that's all it takes, is just a couple little wraps and it's secure. And now I'm going to do this again where I just kind of use it like I'm scribbling back and forth. There we go. Making these little chunky portions, and you can push it up the core, whatever you're using, whether it's yarn or a thread or whatever's going on, and you can kind of help it. You can shape it a little bit. It's gonna drag around, and that is totally fine. We are gonna let it kind of do its thing and bring it up and bring it back down. Cool. And now that we're back to the white section, I just gave it a flip, let this yarn go onto there, and we're ready to continue. I'm going to help this get onto the wheel a little bit. Yeah, so I don't have my tension quite high enough to suck it on there all by itself. I've come to the first section of actual locks and not just the thinner spun wool. This has a lot of curl and texture to it. So I'm not going to scribble back and forth with this section. I'll show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to anchor it the same way by flipping around so that this one's coming at the 90 degree. Whoa, and look at that. This is a good troubleshooting moment. This happens, it's fine. Here's all you need to do. I'll show you. I'm going to pull some of this back out. I'm going to make sure I'm holding on to this because I don't want it to lose any twist. If it does, I can, twist it by hand manually by flipping it between my fingers. So I'm going to put this up here along with it, and then I'm going to pinch all three together so that, there they are all held together. And now we continue, and as soon as it gets around the thread together, right, the end of where I was plying from and the broken end, those come around together. Now I switch. And I just go back and forth for a second there, and now it's secure. All right, so this is what I was going to do for this section. I was going to anchor it and then put this onto the thread and give it a shove. As I do that, it creates a little bit of a thicker spot, but it shoves all of those little bits of locks together so that they hang out and make even more cool looking texture. I'll help it along here if I need to, so it can make it through the orifice. Yeah, if I had scribbled back and forth with this part, I think it would definitely be stuck. But this is working out just fine. I'll keep shoving it forward, and that's it. So I'll flip it back to the 90 degree. There we go. On our way. I hope I don't jinx this by talking about that this is a possibility, but sometimes your core thread can break. Oh no, what do we do? Well, if that happens, I take the broken end and I tie it in a knot, and then I do a little back and forth, regardless of if it's the colorful spot or not. It doesn't have to be a huge dramatic back and forth, but just enough to kind of hide the knot and keep on going. One final troubleshooting tip that I wanted to give you is that the longer you're treadling and holding on to this, whether you're working with it in a section or doing your flip arounds, your manipulations of it, the longer you're holding on to it, the more likely it's going to untwist because you're going the plying direction and it will drift apart. So the trick is that while you're holding on to not the thread, but the ply that has already been spun, don't let it accumulate any twist. It needs to be going onto the thread. Are you ready for the big reveal? I am, but I have to finish plying this first. I'll be right back. I stayed up too late to get this yarn done, but it's worth it. I was just enjoying myself so much. This yarn is like every different color, every different section is a total adventure. And I hope you're enjoying this little slideshow right here while I tell you a couple last things about this yarn and then give you the view of the full skein. The question that comes up so often about this type of yarn is, what do you do with it? And that's a very good question. This isn't really a great knitting yarn. That's not to say that you can't. I'm sure on some large oversized gauged needles it could look really, really cool. But I would say that the place this yarn truly shines, the place where it is just perfect, is in a woven piece. Similar to that. That is a wall hanging that I dyed and I carded and I spun and I wove. And textured yarns like this look amazing in wall hangings. Also consider freeform crochet. Now it can be a little difficult to get that hook through there sometimes. When it's really textured, you might have to kind of slow down and pay attention to where the hook is going, where the actual loops are. But imagine like a beanie kind of hat, and then you just freeform crochet a yarn like this, a super textured yarn like this, to make the brim around the edge. How cool would that be? Amazing. So if you have some other ideas about how you could use a highly textured yarn like this, or if you've done projects with highly textured yarns like this, leave a comment down below. Here is what we've all been waiting for, the final pictures of this amazing skein of yarn. Lori M, thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon and sponsoring the Wheel of Mystery videos. I can't wait to see what the Wheel of Mystery fiber is going to give us to spin for next time. So make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss that. And I will see you in another spinning tutorial video very soon. Happy spinning!